I really love the Danganronpa series. Ever since I found these games around a year ago, I couldn't get enough. These games do so much right, but my favorite part about these games is how immersive they are. These games are completely immersive experiences that offer their own take on murder mysteries, and in this video I want to go through each of the games one by one and discuss how the gameplay, the music, and the writing come together to make this an immersive experience. Now, I'm making this video mostly for fans of this series, but I want to make it a little accessible for people who have never played this game before. So what I'm going to do is talk about the first game with very little spoilers. I'm not going to reveal any major plot points, but you're going to know all the details of chapter 1 and maybe a few details about characters. If you're new to the Danganronpa series and you're interested in the game after you hear me talk about the first one, go buy the games and play them because man, are you in for a wild ride. You will not be able to get off this ride once you get on. I picked up Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc during one of my reading weeks. I ended up playing the game for 24 hours straight. It was just impossible to put down after finishing the first chapter. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the settings so you understand what I'm talking about. You play as Makoto Naegi, who is a student attending Hope's Academy. Hope's Academy is a high school that only accepts talented people. You have to be the best at what you do in order to get scouted for this school. For example, you have the ultimate baseball star, the ultimate fashionista, the ultimate pop sensation. This school is just made up of ultimates. You play as the ultimate lucky student. Now, compared to the other talents, that talent's pretty normal. That's not something you work hard to achieve. And that's part of what makes Makoto an easy self-insert. The first minute of the game is him talking about how normal and average he is, and ironically, this makes him stand out. On your first day to school, you end up getting knocked out and you wake up trapped inside the school with 14 other students. Then this crazy bear Monokuma shows up and tells you that in order to escape, you have to kill one of your classmates and get away with it. This setting immediately engages the player because it's just thrilling and exciting. You immediately want to understand what's going on, why you're trapped there, and if the students are really going to end up killing each other. Right away, you can feel how tense the air is as you don't know who will make the first move and commit a murder. However, Makoto is really trusting of other people, and early on he establishes a bond with Sayaka. Sayaka makes the player and Makoto feel like they've made a friend in a very unexpected place. You actually feel like you can relax a little bit knowing that you've made a friend and have somebody you can trust in. As fast as this relationship began, it falls apart because Monokuma introduces some motive videos. These motive videos are to motivate you to commit murder, go figure. When Makoto and Sayaka watch their videos, they feel like they need to leave the school. Makoto tries to deny that the videos are real, not only for himself, but for the sake of Sayaka. The next morning, unsurprisingly, Sayaka ends up dead. And once again, Makoto has to deny that this is real. He has to go and check Sayaka's body. Even when Junko gets killed right in front of them, Makoto has to check her pulse just to make sure that it actually happened. This is where the player and Makoto start becoming in sync. You don't want to believe that the girl who was so sweet to you just died. She was the only person I trusted. I wanted to go through the game with her. Come on, man. And Junko's gone too? Like, come on, this is unfair. You can't expect me to deal with this. This is where the game really begins though. The investigation process is amazing. The music is so catchy, and when you start putting together clues, it just all clicks. Investigation is a really simple process. You just click and point, but the music makes it interesting to hear Makoto's inner thoughts and analyze the evidence. After you gather your clues, you have to head to the class trial. Now, this part of the game, you have to determine who the culprit of the case is. If you catch them, they get executed. If you don't catch them, everybody else gets executed. Now that makes the situation pretty much... No, the situation is life or death. So you think that the characters would reflect this and put their all into investigating in order to save their lives, right? Nope, the only people who investigate enough are Kayoko and Makoto. Everybody else seems to not care about their lives for most of the game. Despite trials seeming like a formality because you probably already know who the murderer is, it is still really fun to debate and figure out lies, because there's always a hidden truth to the case. These class trials are also fully voice acted, which is another huge thing that makes Danganronpa stand out. And it really helped in the first game because it still felt like conversations flowed really well, and you were actually in a debate with other people. There's also a lot of mini games in the trials, but I want to talk about those towards the end of the video where I can easily talk about all the games at once. So getting back on track to the story, the end of the trial is what made me play for 24 hours straight. You learn that Danganronpa is a game of betrayal. Anybody will betray you. You also learn that the goal of the mastermind is to make you feel despair, which they achieve whenever they kill your friends. Makoto, however, grows to accept that despair. Instead of denying it like he did earlier in the game, he faces it head on. Normally, I would hate a character like Makoto because he's so noble and optimistic, but it works. Even though he's generic, I ended up loving him because you really feel like he cares, and this makes Makoto a good rallying point for the characters in the game. Makoto's abnormal optimism and determination just make him so interesting to follow. He knows the mastermind doesn't want him to trust anybody, so what does he do? He gives everybody complete trust. We, the players, understand it's naive to completely trust everybody, but we can see the value in Makoto's optimism. If he's able to unite all the students, this game ends. There's no game if there's no players. Makoto is the natural underdog. We want to root for him. We want to see him win and defeat despair. While it might be simple, sharing this goal of wanting to defeat the mastermind with Makoto works to immerse you into his character and into the world. Makoto never blames the other students, he only sees them as victims in this senseless killing game. Last but not least, this is what ties the story and the gameplay together, the music. The soundtrack in this game lays down the base for the rest of the Danganronpa games. All the other games have new tracks, but a lot of them are remix tracks from this game. This game's tracks can make you feel a huge range of emotions. It can make you anxious, it can make you feel really sad, it can make your rebuttals feel really epic, it can make you feel confused, it can even make you feel like you're getting used to your time being here. Like I said earlier, Danganronpa is an experience, and this is the soundtrack.
Good answer.
And these are the words that appear.
No, it's wrong. Natural reaction for any guy.
So what you're saying is...
You do have a reason, yes. Why didn't your bathroom door open?
Killer is you!
And here are the closing thoughts on this game. This game's themes and characters are a lot weaker than the other games. I feel like this game accomplished what it wanted to do though. The original version of this game was named Distrust, and the artwork was a lot darker. And the game does manage to portray this dark vibe. You always feel trapped in the school. Even as a player, you feel trapped because you're just stuck in this loop. Even as you advance through the school, the mystery isn't clear at all. It's still a mystery. And you never know who you can trust in this game. You will be betrayed over and over again. This game is just great at its dark vibes, making you feel trapped and suspicious of everybody. Now, despite this dark setting being something that pulls you into the game world, I think it's also something that kinda limits the game. Sure, the setting always kept a sense of mystery in the air because you were suspicious of everybody and it pulled Makoto forward. But you don't really get to know anybody since they're all doubting each other and act like assholes towards one another. It kinda just took away from the experience in a way. Luckily for me, the gameplay, ranging from the super deducing investigations to the frenzied and heated class trials, and the music and Makoto was enough to draw me in, and the despair. The first Danganronpa will always have the advantage of having the best plot twist because it's just the craziest thing to get dropped on you. And when it does get dropped on you, you just feel despair. You feel like the world is crumbling around you. Despite being awake for 24 hours, it was impossible to sleep after being crushed. That's what the game does to you. And I needed more. The despair just made me feel so alive. I needed more. Lucky for me, the second game is coming out in 2 months. Those 2 months felt like an eternity. But finally, Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair arrived on Steam. I'm going to preface Danganronpa 2 with a little comparison. The first Danganronpa game is like your first kiss. It's a little sloppy, it's messy, it wasn't the best, but it happened, and that's what makes it great. It was a unique experience that you got to have for the first time. Even if it wasn't the most perfect kiss you've ever had, it was great because it was the first one that happened. I'm gonna be honest, it's been a few days. I can't come up with a comparison for 2. Maybe, I've never done drugs before. 2 is like drugs probably, right? It puts you on a high. It makes you feel amazing. It makes you feel crazy. It just makes me feel... This is what Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair is. It is a fucking ride. I have 3 things I want to highlight when it comes to talking about what makes this game immersive. The first is the setting. It's a sequel and it takes place on an island. The second thing I really want to highlight is the characters, and the third thing is Hajime Hinata and his struggle. Of course, these things all overlap, but anyway, let's begin. The setting of Danganronpa 2. A sequel is exciting because you want to find out what happened after the first game, but Kodaka uses this as a clever way to subvert your expectations and to just mess with his consumers. This comes hand in hand with the setting of it being a tropical paradise. Instead of being cramped up in a dark school with weird lights, you're in an open, free island. You're here to relax and have fun. The game makes it seem like it's a dating sim with its fake intro before it turns into the killing game. Monokuma also reveals the plot twist from the first game early on, that you suffer from memory loss and that there is a traitor in the group. The game is constantly using the fact that it's a sequel against you. It does this with Nagato. The character has the same voice as Makoto. His name's almost an anagram for Makoto, and then he starts ranting about hope. It confuses you, it throws you off. And then there's also Hajime. You don't know his talent. There was somebody like that in the first game. So the whole game you're kind of thinking, what is this guy's talent? Kayako was obvious. Come on, like throwing out a random question to trick somebody into saying that they're the killer, being fast at investigating, being familiar with dead bodies, and the fucking gloves. This was obvious, but Hajime, you can't figure out what he is. You think that you have this advantage of knowledge, but you don't have any advantage at all. You just get dragged in as the rug is pulled from under your feet. Also, whenever Monokuma talks about the first game, it seems like he's talking to the player. And this is kinda cool because we laugh along and go, haha, I get it. But you also come to learn Monokuma talking about the first game is part of the mystery. He isn't talking to you, he's talking to the survivors of the first game. I just can't get over how clever this is. People love when sequels reference whatever came before, and they use this not only to draw players into the world to make it seem connected, but they also use it as part of the overarching mystery. Now to talk about where the game took place, the virtual tropical paradise. The beginning of the game makes it really apparent that you might be inside some virtual reality or video game, and there are clues that keep popping up telling you that this isn't real. I think this is part of the experience. I think we're supposed to have these red flags in our face that tell us this isn't real, but we kinda just accept it alongside the characters and go back to focusing on this island experience. The characters in this game are amazing. They're so colorful and unusual. You find yourself laughing a lot of time in this game and having fun getting to know these characters. You just want to spend time with them and get to know them more and forge friendships. It supports this whole island experience that the game is trying to push in the beginning. You also want to see the group stick together because you feel like their craziness offsets each other in this weird way that works. You just feel like they could be the best of friends if they weren't in this situation. It is so easy to get absorbed into this island experience and just want to forget about the killing game, especially when everything is going well. If there's something this game did right over the other, it's character interactions. When everything is going well, the interactions are just so sweet and fun to observe. Aided by the music, you get lured into this lull where you just want to stay in this peaceful island paradise. Depending on who you talk to, how you view trials will change, how you view deaths will change, how you view the final cast will change. If you spend free time with Maharu or Ibuki, you'll be devastated when they die because you find out that they are only people who are trying to help others. If you spend free time with Mikon, for example, like the characters, it will be hard to convict her because you find out she's somebody who's bullied and always blames herself. It's the same with Gundam. You just find out he's somebody who's lonely but really has this passion for animals and really cares for them. Everybody will get immersed into this game differently because some characters will call to them more than others. But I think the important end result is that everybody gets something out of it, that you get immersed into this game's characters and world no matter who you spend time with. The obvious drawback to this is that you'll miss out on some characters because there's not enough time for all of them. For example, you won't know that Fuyuhiko views Hajime kinda like a brother, or that Soda really values Hajime's friendship. The reason I'm highlighting this is because it's the best part of the video to say this. I know it's not DRV3's time yet, but I just want to leave this note here that this beautiful character relationship building is something they improved in V3 by making it part of the main scenario and not side content. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled Danganronpa 2. Hajime Hinata. Hajime will always share this doubt with you. He doubts that things are going to go well, and you as the player know that things aren't going to go well. You want to see the characters flourish, but you know what you're playing. You know it's not gonna happen. Even though he doubts the people he's around and the situation he's in, Hajime still tries to get to know the other characters just like we do. Like I said earlier, when getting to know the characters, everything just feels so peaceful, like you're lured into a lull. It feels like Hajime is lured into this lull too, where he's like, you know what? Things are gonna be alright. And as a player, if you start feeling these things too, that things are gonna be alright, and then a murder comes along and disturbs your peace, then the game is working. Hajime, the characters in the island, you're getting immersed into it. I have to go on about Hajime just a little bit longer. There's just so much there that makes him relatable as a protagonist. Hajime is just so likable. There's nobody that he doesn't have a unique interaction with. And when you look at various objects around the game, you see that Hajime is always thinking about his friends. For example, he says that Hayoko and Peko would look great in these cherry blossoms. He's really observant and pays attention just like we do. And like Makoto, you just get the sense that he cares for others. Hajime is just a character who's insecure and he wants to be confident. You always see him doubting himself, but he's always working really hard to overcome these doubts. And he just has to overcome all this other bullshit like doubting your friends, being betrayed. The motives are also complete bullshit at times. There's this crazy mad Nagato you have to deal with as well. And at the end of the game, Hajime has to give up his entire existence. Here you are waiting for your idols from the first game to come and save you, but they don't offer anything to save you at all. You're just left dealing with the whole bullshit you've been dealing with all game as Hajime. This whole time we just watch Hajime be stuck in this situation where he's getting dragged around by Monokuma or Nagato, and then it even feels like he's being dragged around by the Future Foundation. But no more. He's finally able to make the choices that he wants for his own future. The themes and the growth of Hajime is just so much more mature than Makoto and his Little Hope Train, so you're able to connect to this game in a deeper level. Now at its core, this game is very similar to the first one, but the writing has improved vastly. In the first game you could be like, whatever, I don't care if that guy died, he was a fucking asshole anyway. But in this game, when somebody dies, you actually get upset. They've just started mastering this art of immersion. I actually felt like I was on an island, and for many other reasons I felt immersed. The protagonist was fun to follow, it was good to see him grow, he had unique interactions with the other characters who were all unique and fantastic themselves. The music is again perfect. And the game highlighted something that made it unique in the first place. The fact that these students are ultimates. The characters are using their talents all the time throughout the game. The specializations that the students have make this series really attractive to get into. Don't get me wrong, this game isn't perfect. In fact, none of them are. I actually really hate how the ending of this game played out, but that's a whole other discussion. What's important is that it made me care for the characters and made me feel immersed. I felt a lot of emotions playing this game, and I think that that is a victory. They didn't take this victory of a game and run away with it. They pushed for more. And this is where we talk about DRV3. My most anticipated game of 2017. Let's just get straight into it, shall we? I have no clue what Kadaka means when he talks about psychopop or psycho cool, but what I understood was that he wanted this game to be futuristic. And lo and behold, giant robots, the ultimate robot, new techno songs along with techno remixes of old songs, updated visuals that are sporting their own unique style. It just feels like they're pushing the visual novel format to the max. I really couldn't get immersed in the beginning because it was just overshadowed by how new and shiny everything was. I was really impressed, and the whole time I was thinking, wow, this game is great. They put a lot of care into this. The only thing I really felt was that the main character was a force to be reckoned with for once. This might be because of an interview I listened to with Kaede's voice actor. The voice actor was talking about how Kaede is really pushy and bossy, so yeah, I felt like a boss, I guess. This one scene though, this is where my game really began. The scene is perfect, it gave me chills. The music gives you this huge sense of tension, and Shuichi is really highlighted in this scene. The way he talks just adds to the intrigue. From this point on, the game really felt like a mystery game to me. A mystery/detective game. This makes sense later though, considering we end up playing as the
Ace Detective!
Case closed. Let's get drunk, Kaede. They've also laid out the perfect setting to play as a detective. Kodaka said that this Danganronpa supposedly isn't related to the others, and that the theme of this game is truth and lies, so we play as the detective sailing the SS Truth through the sea of lies. With hope, despair, and Junko out the window, any of our theories can be plausible now. We have our own detective work to do. The investigation theme this time around even has this jazz to it that feels befitting of a detective. When it comes to the trials, Shuichi is really confident as a detective, so that means this time around we get to lead the trials for once. It's really fitting because if you're somebody who gets everything right away, you get ahead of the characters pretty often. Shuichi shows that he's thinking ahead sometimes as well, but he always has to debate with the class a little bit to make sure everybody's on the same page, because it doesn't matter if he knows who the culprit is, he has to convince everybody else of his logic. This is also the first time we play as a protagonist who gets to make use of their talent. We get to feel really powerful in the trials for once, because this is Shuichi's world and everybody else is just living in it. Speaking of the class trials, it's time to give a whole overview of the mechanics and explain why I think they make the debate feel so real. The memorization mechanic was great because it makes sense that you don't always have the right answer and that sometimes other people will have the right answer instead. This was removed. I'm kind of okay with it being gone because agree points are kind of similar, not exactly, but it's good enough. The lying mechanic is something that's new. I like the way they implemented it with the gameplay because it makes sense. Like I said, Shuichi is really confident in his detective work, so the fact that you lose influence while trying to come up with a lie, it makes a lot of sense because if you see Shuichi like stumbling there, being quiet, thinking, you'd be suspicious of him a little bit, you wouldn't trust him as much. Lying is also a clever way to find out the truth. Feigning ignorance is something that people do all the time to get answers out of each other, and Shuichi uses this technique to catch culprits. Rebuttal showdowns are my favorite thing about the debates. It makes so much sense that somebody else would want to go one-on-one with you when they really don't believe what you're saying or they're trying to push their own lie. It heats things up and shows that the other characters can think too. Mass panic debates again make it seem more realistic than ever. There's no way this group of teenagers never talks over each other during debates, especially when it's a life or death situation. Scrum debates are fucking great. It makes a lot of sense that the discussion can become stifled when there are two sides and they can't agree on one point. And it's a lot of fun to team up and have a group rebuttal. There's the panic talk action or whatever it's called now. Thematically, this is really cool because you get to back somebody into a corner which they can't escape from. The whole battle process doesn't really feel like it's accomplishing this though. I only really feel like I back somebody into a corner when it comes time to make the final statement. In V3, this was done a lot better because you continuously push them back further and further and you strip them and tear them to shreds. Now for the minigames, starting with everybody's favorite, Hangman's Gambit. One of my friends told me that they feel like the minigames are done well when they introduce an entirely new thought. That it feels like I just overcame this mental block and thought of this. In the first two games, Hangman's Gambit can be kinda hit or miss, but in V3, I feel like it usually did this pretty well. Mind Mine accomplished this most of the time too. And then there's Logic Dive and Psyche Taxi. Logic Dive was done really well. It was all about coming out with new ideas that you haven't discussed, or it was connecting a bunch of pieces of evidence to make sense of something. The end result was always a new idea, and you had to think a bit while choosing your options. In DRV3, this whole idea falls flat. I don't know what happened, but whenever I do a Psyche Taxi, I'm like, really? I just went through all of that to reiterate what we've just discussed for the past hour? There was never any new thought that was added from Psyche Taxi. They just failed with this minigame. It was really boring, it didn't add to the trials, it took away from my experience. Finally, there's the climactic return. You get to feel like a badass in some of the case. It's really smart, you get to go over the whole case so nobody has any doubts. It would be really interesting if one time you did a climactic return and then somebody noticed that there was something missing and then you had to start debating again. But anyway, minigames aside, the trial process is amazing this time around though. They've completely rethought how they use flying text. They add so much personality to it now. There's so much different movement. There's also different effects that appear on screen to portray a little more character from what's being said. And the voice acting. The interesting thing about DRV3's English cast is that it reuses voice actors from the other games. Two of the voice actors who I thought were really weak in DR1, which was Leon and Sayaka, returned. They lasted for the whole game and they did really good on their voices. Again, they are just pushing the bar for visual novels higher and higher. Good voice acting is something that's really good to draw you into the world, and I felt a lot of things from these characters, especially when they talked about how they wanted to live. The themes of this game are truth and lies and fiction versus reality, but I think another theme comes along with all of this, and that is, what does it mean to live, or what are we living for? Sure, the characters' motivations to live and survive might have been fake, but everything was still real to them. Their suffering and desperate attempts to live were all very real. This is what struck me the most. The game felt very human. All these characters had very human aspects when it came to figuring out why they wanted to live, and I want to go through them all and talk about what made this game feel so real. Kaede and Kaito. Their way of living was fighting really hard for what they believed was right. They were the only ones who killed others to try and stop this killing game. They also have really important qualities of good leaders. They have a strong belief in other people and try and encourage them. They also see the potential others are capable of, and they try and draw that out. If you've ever been part of a group or a club, you will see this in good leaders who just want you to be the best you can be. Maki and Gonta. I feel like these two are very similar because they just want to support those around them. They both want to make use of their talent to help everybody in the killing game, but they end up doing the opposite. They end up causing more harm than good in their attempt to help everybody. This is a very real feeling, to have good intentions but have them fall flat when you end up hurting somebody instead. Tenko was also another character who only wanted to offer support. She unintentionally ended up sacrificing herself for Himiko. These three are the characters who always have your back and want to be there for you. And even if they end up hurting you or causing you pain, you still love them because they're your good friends. They just wanted the best for you. Kurumi and Miu. Kurumi lives and dies for her duty to serve others, and it was her duty to live for the sake of a whole country. Miu is very similar. Once we learn that the outside world is destroyed, that's when she tries to go and kill somebody, stating that the outside world needs her help. Even if their motivation was fake, the sense of duty they felt was real. I think most people have a sense of duty towards someone or something, and sometimes you put aside what you want in order to offer your service, your help, whatever you want to call it. Ryoma and Himiko. Ryoma lost everything he was living for, but he was still searching for his reason to live. In the end though, he wasn't able to find it, and he ended up letting himself go. Himiko kinda has this similar attitude where she lives life by just floating through it. Everything takes too much effort for her to do. However, she ends up being inspired by her friends and finds her own reason to live and look forward. When you're living, sometimes something you were once passionate about can become tainted, maybe due to heartbreak or betrayal. It can just shatter your whole world. It can be hard to recover from that and find something new to work towards every day. Like Himiko, sometimes we can just feel like everything is a pain, but with the right support from others, we can stand tall again. Anji and Kokichi both live through manipulation of others, but in completely different ways. Anji's way was completely selfish. She disregarded anybody who disagreed with her, and she used other people to push her own beliefs. I really hope you don't encounter anybody like this in your life, but I'm sure these types of people exist. Kokichi, on the other hand, is like a little shit. I'm kinda reminded of myself in elementary school. He's a trickster who lives for lies and chaos. Even if his lies have some good intentions, he tramples over other people while doing so. Kokichi just comes off as this child who's lying to have fun because he's so bored, and I kinda get that. For example, one time in elementary school we had a crossword or something like that, and my friend asked, what do we do when we're done? And I said, hand it in, you get a prize, you get like $5. I just thought it was a fun way to make a situation interesting. The teacher overheard me though and called me out, called me a little devious. Me and my friend had a laugh. This could have hurt him though. He could have got his hopes up and then been very disappointed. That's just the nature of lies. At a basic level, I think Kokichi is relatable, even though he takes his lies way too far. Kurekyo. Kurekyo lived for a delusion. He was actually just crazy. Despite this, I still find some human aspect in what Kurekyo was living for. Kurekyo has no malice behind his murders. He doesn't even show malice towards the group before he's about to die. As a matter of fact, he sees them as friends and wants to watch over them to see how they live. He goes on and says that the living must find a way to accept death as it determines how they live. For him, death is just a change of form. Applying this to him basically means that he lives to kill. But in a crazy twisted way, he lives to see humanity grow as they overcome the hardships of death. He is the ultimate anthropologist. He loves humans. I think this is very relatable to the way we consume stories in a game, movie, book, or whatever. Following the hardships of fictional people makes us feel something. We get more invested into characters that feel human, or characters that relate to human aspects, like searching for purpose. People can find reasons to live in the beautiful parts of humanity, just not in the crazy twisted way that Kyo does. Sumugi lived and fought for her love of Danganronpa. She is just a crazy fangirl. A lot of people devote themselves to fandoms, but hopefully you don't do it to this extent. Rantaro was a guy who was there. I'm sorry, I don't really have anything to say about him. Kibo. He's a bit of a special case since he's kind of the audience as well. But if there's anything we can take from him, it's his words at the end of the game. Kibo always listened to this voice in the back of his head. It was like his whole world, and he chose to give up that world to fight alongside his friends. That's how he wanted to use his life. He wanted to use it trusting and believing in his friends. It's hard to say what was Kibo and what was the audience, but I honestly believed he was a friend. He just spoke with such care for people like Mew, who everybody else hated, but he knew that Mew was kind. And finally we have Shuichi. Shuichi understood that he was weak, and because of this, he leaned on his friends to support him. He understood that you can't do everything by yourself, and maybe for this reason, he was drawn to Kaede. He's actively trying to become stronger and use his skill as a detective to try and help his friends. There's a saying that before you can help other people, you must first help yourself, and this is what Shuichi is doing. He became stronger so that he could be a person that his friends could rely on, and so that he could keep his promises to the dead. Because of this, he lived trying to improve who he was, and he was able to stand up against the world and do everything within his power to fight back against those who just wanted to use his friends as entertainment. I really relate to this idea of becoming a stronger person, not just for yourself, but so you can change the world in the way that you want to. These characters feel so real. Even if their characters are exaggerated, even if we're not in a killing game, I can relate to what these characters are feeling. I think this is what's so important about the ending of DRV3 and why this is a good experience. Even if everything was fake, all the feelings born from this lie were real. Like Kadaka said, if this work of fiction was able to make you feel something, then it worked. Once again, I think all these games are great experiences and they're really immersive. They capture the feeling of a high-stakes game, they capture the feeling of investigating and debating, and they each have their own atmosphere that makes the game interesting. I think the series has come a really long way. I know everybody's not gonna see it the way I do, and maybe you disagree or agree or have a different opinion on what was immersive, and that's okay. Immersion can be a really subjective experience, but I think these games are really good at it. If you want to discuss what you love about the series or how your experience was different from mine, feel free to discuss in the comments. This video is part of a video series I'm starting where I talk about what I think made a game stand out. You're not gonna hear a lot of negatives, but that doesn't mean I think that the game is perfect. I just really want to bring this discussion about ideas that I think deserve some praise. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening to me.